In MySQL, we have a concept called trigger. Triggers are the reserved command that we can set so whenever a specific event has happened on our MySQL server, the trigger will be activated and the reserved command of it will be executed. This is the syntax when we want to create a trigger. We type create trigger, then we name it, and then we can specify the trigger to take effect before or after that specific event. And the specific event can be either insert, update, or delete on a specific table. And after that, we can create our reserve command. Now let's go to the terminal and see how we can create one. I'm logged into the server and I'm using MySQL tutorials database, and the lessons table that we have has a column called last update. We want to create a trigger so whenever we update one or more of these records, the trigger is activated and updates the last update field of that updated row or rows with the latest time stamp, latest date and time. The date and time will be calculated by the MySQL server itself, and the trigger will be executed after or before the update. Since we have not set any triggers on the server yet, if I type show triggers, we will get an empty set. But after creating that, the show triggers will show our trigger. First of all, we need to pay attention to this one, the default delimiter of MySQL. We are creating a trigger, right? And inside that trigger, we will write a command. That command will have a delimiter. When we are creating that command, at the middle of creation of the trigger, when we press enter to save the trigger, MySQL will consider it as a real command and will be trying to execute that command, and it will mess everything up and our trigger will be broken. So before creating a trigger, it's very important to change the delimiter, the default delimiter, from the semicolon, that is the default MySQL delimiter, to something else. And after creating the trigger, we can change the delimiter back to the default one. To change the delimiter, the only thing we need to do is typing delimiter and then the new delimiter. Now the delimiter is changed and we are safe to go ahead and create the trigger. To create a trigger, we type create trigger, then we name it. Let's name it update time. And then we want it to be triggered before update. So we type before update on, the table is lessons, and for each row that is updated, we need to create a command. The command begins here, and now it's time to set the command. Set new last update is the column that we want to work on, this one, and the last update will be equal to now, and this is where we type the delimiter for it. And this was the command, and here is the end of the delimiter. Now we type our new delimiter to end the process and save the trigger. And now we need to change the delimiter back to the default one. This was the whole process of creating the trigger. Now if I type show triggers again, we will see that we have created a trigger and it's executed before and the rest of the information. Now let's take a look again at the lessons table. We have nothing here. All of the records for the last update column are null. And let's update this one, okay? I type update lessons, set title to something else, for example, install and uninstall, where ID equals 2. And I updated the second row. Right now, select from table again, and as you see, the trigger is activated and has updated the last update column by the last date and time. So far we were talking about creating and showing triggers, and now let's see how we can delete them. Drop trigger if exists and the name of the trigger. As easy as this, you can delete a trigger that is already set on your MySQL table. Now let's get back to the terminal and drop the trigger that we just created. We named the trigger that we created update time. This will be the trigger that we want to drop. So drop trigger if exists, and then the name. And query OK means the trigger is dropped. Now show triggers will show nothing anymore since we have dropped it. As you see, Trigger is a very handy tool for creating automations and eases our operation, and it's a must-have skill as a database manager. I hope you like this video, and until the next one, I bid you farewell.